In terms of the percentage amounts that one should allocate in terms of gold or gold and silver, the standard rule is far more than your registered investment advisor probably recommends. Certainly in the United States or in the West, it's almost an ignored asset. And the reasons for that are myriad and take much longer than a few minutes to explain. In countries that have experienced inflation, studied sound money, in particular from the Austrian school in Europe on down, and certainly here in Switzerland, it's very normal for most high net worth investors or individuals to put at least 20% of their liquid or their available net worth or liquid net worth into precious metals, again as an insurance asset against weak paper money or fiat money. These countries have gone through cycles of war, inflation, geopolitical and political unrest, so it's not unusual at all to have parents or grandparents and great-grandparents who can explain moments in history where their currency was shellacked by a debt crisis or a military crisis or a political crisis. And we see that now more and more in the headlines, but those who are familiar with history and the history of money, not just geopolitical history, whether it's in Italy, Spain, or France, or certainly now in the UK and starting to happen in the US, those who are familiar with that history are familiar with trying to safeguard against those type of risks. And we're familiar with the history of paper money are quite familiar with those risks. So again, the short answer is usually it's a minimum of 20% allocated to physical gold, usually held outside of the banking system, certainly here in Switzerland where it's more common to hold it in private vaults. But even in the case of most high net worth investors here in Europe, it's either in a bank or in a vault, but the minimums are 10 to 20% at least. Some hold more. There's always the risk of concentration risk, but for us, and for me in particular, I would begin at 20%. And then as Egon likes to joke, you can invest as much as you can afford to not lose. So he would allocate more than that. But again, the quick answer is a minimum of 20%, if not more.